is Harry's sort of ongoing obsession with healing the royal rift? The central raft of that seems to be to persuade his dad, the King, King Charles, to be with him at the opening of the Invictus Games next year in Birmingham, here in Britain.
Harry's royal rescue plan has reportedly collapsed in the most humiliating way imaginable, because after allegedly being denied the Invictus endorsement he wanted from King Charles, the Duke of Sussex is now rumored to be preparing a desperate public appeal designed to force the palace into answering a question it would rather bury in silence. Will the king support wounded veterans beside his son? Or leave Harry standing alone on the biggest stage of his post-royal life? Harry thought he could use one quiet hour inside Highgrove House to pull off the ultimate maneuver, begging King Charles to officially back him for the Invictus Games in Birmingham. He brought the full family charm offensive, sitting across from his father, expecting a royal endorsement that would instantly fix his standing. But when the ask hit the table, King Charles didn't just hesitate, he turned him down flat. The king rejected the plea, leaving Harry completely melting down behind the scenes as his biggest comeback plan crumbled before it even started. What allegedly followed was not the warm breakthrough Harry's supporters had hoped to celebrate, but a chilling stretch of palace silence that left his team scrambling to control the narrative, because Harry had reportedly entered that private meeting believing family reconciliation and Invictus cooperation could be negotiated together, only to discover that Charles was unwilling to let a personal reunion become a public royal endorsement. Then came the supposed second blow. Another conversation about Invictus was reportedly removed from the royal schedule, leaving Harry convinced that palace officials were quietly running down the clock while avoiding a dramatic confrontation. And that is where this rumored public appeal becomes explosive. Harry allegedly realizes that a private request can disappear behind palace walls, but a public request places Charles in an almost impossible position. If Harry openly appeals for his father to support Invictus, Charles must either appear beside the son who attacked the institution or risk being portrayed as abandoning a veterans event on British soil. It is emotional pressure wrapped inside a noble cause, and critics are already whispering that Harry could be using the Invictus name as the ultimate lever against the monarchy. Because think about the sheer positioning here. Harry lands in the UK, gets a brief window at Highgrove, and immediately the headlines leak. Harry hopes Charles will stand by his side at Invictus. It's presented as an olive branch, a symbolic end to the royal feud. But let's slice through the glossy PR layer and look at the cold, hard reality underneath. Why does Harry need Charles on that stage in Birmingham? Because without proximity to the crown, the Sussex brand is running completely on empty. Behind the scenes, the rumored cancellation has allegedly triggered arguments over how far Harry should go. One side supposedly wants a dignified statement focused entirely on veterans, unity, recovery, and service. Another side is said to favor a sharper appeal, reminding the public that Charles is commander-in-chief and that Invictus once enjoyed enthusiastic royal support. But either strategy carries enormous danger, because the moment Harry makes the disagreement public, the story stops being about reconciliation and becomes a loyalty test for his father. Why is the biggest headline of the year a visit back to the royal institution that they left? Why is that the story? And that brings us to the deeper, far more dangerous question that the royal establishment is scrambling to deal with behind closed doors. What happens to the late Queen's legacy if Charles gives in? Queen Elizabeth II made one thing absolute before her passing, one boundary set in stone: no half in, half out. Harry may believe a public appeal will reopen the door Charles allegedly closed, but palace insiders would understand the trap immediately. Give Harry the royal appearance he wants, and it could look like the return of the half-in, half-out arrangement the monarchy rejected years ago. Refuse him publicly, and Harry gains a powerful new grievance capable of dominating every Invictus headline. Now, the rumored statement is said to be hanging over both camps, rewritten, reconsidered, and possibly waiting for release, while one devastating question remains unanswered. If Harry finally speaks, will Charles surrender to the pressure or cancel far more than a meeting? The rumored appeal may have sounded like a clever escape route, but the deeper Harry pushed, the more complicated the palace position allegedly became. Because Charles was not simply being asked to attend a sporting ceremony, Charles was being asked to restore royal credibility to a project now surrounded by questions about money, influence, publicity, and whether the veterans were being overshadowed by a bitter family drama. According to the stories circulating around the meeting, Meghan and the children were presented as evidence that the family wounds could still heal. Yet the carefully arranged display supposedly failed to produce the commitment Harry expected, leaving the entire strategy trapped between private disappointment and public humiliation. And reports suggest that Meghan and the children were brought in as part of a carefully orchestrated display of family unity. The strategy was simple: show Charles what he's missing, trigger his grandfatherly instincts, and then drop the big ask. Harry wanted Charles to commit to attending either the opening or closing ceremony of the 2025 Invictus Games in Birmingham, along with several high-profile sporting events. He wanted the full sovereign presence: the royal motorcade, the official photography, the global press corps recording the King of England cheering next to his exiled son. It sounded like a masterstroke on paper, but Harry completely miscalculated the man sitting across from him. The alleged answer was devastating precisely because it was delivered without an explosion, no dramatic argument, no furious order, and no scene that could be carried back to Montecito as proof of royal cruelty. Only a cautious refusal wrapped in institutional language and conditions that made the dream appearance increasingly unlikely. William was reportedly unwilling to support any arrangement resembling a royal comeback. Catherine was said to share that concern. Camilla allegedly remembered the attacks that had already damaged trust, while Prince Edward and Princess Anne were portrayed as defenders of a simpler rule that public royal recognition must remain connected to public royal duty. Whether every detail of that private resistance is accurate remains unverified, but the pressure surrounding the decision explains why a supposedly innocent invitation became a dangerous test of authority. William doesn't want it. Catherine doesn't want it. Camilla doesn't want it. Edward doesn't want it. Anne doesn't want it. Harry's dream of getting together with the king, healing the rift, is just that. It's an impossible dream, isn't it? I do think Prince Harry desperately misses his life in the UK. He's lonely in the States. He has no purpose here. He's not acknowledged. Then, the crisis allegedly shifted from family rejection to financial urgency. The grand promises of independence had once sounded limitless, with Netflix, Spotify, publishing contracts, speeches, productions, and commercial ventures presented as foundations of a powerful new life. Yet, the original commentary claimed that enormous expenses, security costs, property payments, public relations operations, and legal battles were steadily consuming that freedom. Harry's public appeal therefore risked looking less like a selfless request for veteran support and more like a frantic attempt to reconnect the Sussex image with the institution that once gave it unmatched global value. The suggestion involving the Daily Mail Group, the speculation surrounding Elton John, and the claims connected to Sophie Shandaka were all presented without reliable proof, but together they created the image of a household surrounded by pressure and searching for a royal shield. Inside Invictus, the most damaging question was no longer whether Harry could attract attention, but whether that attention still served the wounded personnel whose recovery gave the movement its purpose. If every medal, speech, and ceremony became another chapter in the conflict with Charles, the veterans would again be pushed behind the royal spectacle. That is why the rumored cancellation matters so much. Charles could honor military service privately through Buckingham Palace while refusing to validate Harry's personal campaign, leaving the public appeal with nowhere to go. Harry believes speaking publicly might force the door open, yet the appeal may instead expose the brutal limit of his influence, because if Charles remains silent, William refuses compromise, and Invictus protects its mission, Harry could discover that the loudest plea of his new life produces no royal answer at all.